Hello, my name is Zoran Knezik from Port Albany Port Authority. Port Albany Port Authority owns and operates three deep sea berth terminals here in Port Albany, along with five marinas, campground, and our newest addition, which we're very excited about, Food Hub, or better known Dock Plus, which hosts five new tenants processing seafood and mushrooms and berries, along with a commercial kitchen for public use. Us, as well as our users, find it often challenging to get the product to the customer cost effectively and efficiently. It is our pleasure to introduce today's session, Getting Goods to the Market. We are delighted to support Vancouver Island Economic Summit and Vancouver Island Economy. Please visit our virtual booth at the summit and get in touch with us. Thank you and enjoy the session.
Thank you. Tonchi, hello. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dan Hurley, Chair of the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance and Principal of the Hurley Martin Group. I want to acknowledge with gratitude that VIEA operates on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish, Nuu-Chulnut, and Kwakwaka'wakw peoples and home of the Métis Nation. This panel session is very timely and important for all of us in the Vancouver Island region. After all, we are surrounded by ocean. Living on these islands has many advantages, but also some disadvantages, especially when it comes to getting goods to market. It is often said that we can't get there from here. Issues of distribution and access to markets have long been a challenge for island food producers. Demand for local products has never been higher, so now is the time to solve this problem, so that producers can focus on meeting this growing demand while supporting an efficient distribution system. Here to address this challenge today are three speakers. Dave McCormick is Director of Public Relations and Business Development with the Port Alberni Port Authority, and as you heard, they are also sponsors of this session. Thank you for your support. Marissa Miles is co-founder of Tree Island Yogurt based in Royston in the Comox Valley. And Mark Smith is Principal of Query Distribution based in Victoria, and he's also the past chair of the VIEA Board of Directors. So welcome everyone. How are we today?
Excellent.
Excellent, good. Well, looking forward to a very good discussion. We're going to hear from each of our panelists. I've asked them to make some opening remarks, and then we'll get into a bit of a roundtable. So first, I'm going to go to Dave. You can start off the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you for everybody tuning in out there in virtual conference land, as we're all getting used to the last few months, and in some cases maybe getting a little bit tired of it, but it's certainly events like the summit, whether in person or online, that certainly energize me, and I know so many of my colleagues. So excited to be here, and I'm pleased to be participating from the unceded territories of the Sishat and Hupachasit First Nations here as I look out my window at the beautiful Alberni Harbor. This panel is yet again another great opportunity to talk about how we at the Port Alberni Port Authority, PAPA, as we're fondly called, how we take our role as economic and community development leaders to heart and to the heartbeat of our communities. As one of 17 Canadian port authorities, our primary role is facilitating economic growth through trade. However, and more specifically to our topic today of getting island-produced foods to market, I'm excited to share how our Port Alberni Food Hub, recently branded as The Dock, directly contributes to providing solutions to basic food producing and distribution problems in support of our local and regional economies. So I very much look forward to the conversation today with my fellow panelists. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks very much, Dave. Marissa, we'll go to you next. Marissa, we're just gonna you'll have to unmute.
Sorry, thank you. Hi. I'm Marissa from Tree Island Yogurt. I hope you guys have seen our product in the local grocery store. So I was asked to join this panel sort of as a local example of a food producer that's distributing on the island as well as in Metro Vancouver, the Okanagan, as far as Alberta and Toronto. So I have some on the ground experience with food distribution and manufacturing.
Thank you, Marissa. And Mark, we'll go to you for your opening remarks.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Dan. So as Dan alluded to earlier when he introduced us, that I'm the former chair of VIEA, and some of my additional work in VIEA for a number of years as I've been involved in what started out as an advanced manufacturing committee. And during that time, it morphed into a foreign trade zone committee, which we were successful in getting the island designated as a foreign trade zone about 2 years ago. And as that committee continues to evolve and we work to really attract foreign direct investment and try and expose the opportunity around foreign trade zone, the ongoing theme has always been around the distribution piece on Vancouver Island, which might sound odd because we all see a lot of trucks and barges and to some extent rail running around the island. But at the end of the day, the majority of goods specifically coming in here are landing in the major ports in Vancouver and Seattle, getting trucked up here. And as a lot of those folks out there probably listening here well know, that you can bring things halfway across the country, get it to Vancouver, and then spend as much money getting it from Vancouver to here. And really the reverse applies in getting it off. So I guess as on a personal note, as a COVID pivot, and we took some of those discussions as really something else that spun out of our VIEA background, is that somebody should really take that opportunity and see if we can solve that problem. So hence we formed our net new company, Query Distribution, and our vision is where we're working really with the ports. We're working with a number of transport folks around, think about a truck coming here. We understand that statistics are somewhere around 92% of trucks that are going back to the lower mainland are empty. There's just massive opportunities, of which I'm sure we can get into in much more depth later. But I guess my role here is to try and to bridge the gap. And again, with the COVID piece, the food opportunity alone is monumental. So looking forward to furthering the discussion. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Mark. So we have a number of questions I want to explore before we open it up to the audience. And just a reminder that, as probably most of you are now used to, if you have a question for our panelists, we'll have about 15 minutes at the end. We also have our roundtable, which is scheduled for 4 p.m. So we encourage you to stick around for that, join us for that, so we can get into further depth. But put those questions into the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. So the first question I have is, what do each of you see as the greatest challenges of being on an island and getting goods to market? So Mark, maybe we'll go back to you to start off with.
Well, I guess I'm lucky I got to answer first, because I think the immediate answer is obvious, that being on an island, if one's looking to expand the market and get off the island, that certainly comes with its own unique set of challenges, which really translates into predominantly added costs. But even at a local level, part of that challenge in that distribution is you could be a producer in Campbell River on a small scale, and sometimes the distribution cost to even look at a market that might be Victoria, might be a new market for that producer, even within the confines geographically of the island, sometimes even those costs are monumental. So really, to try and aggregate those things and get some economies of scale, and also to be able to compete at a larger scale with some of the major producers that you might see in some of these larger grocery stores. We know a lot of that product is coming from off the island, is really, I think, the single largest challenge. Yeah,
Marissa, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Mark. Definitely, as a food producer, we're needing to compete with products that are made elsewhere, and so the cost of getting the food off the island is an added cost, and it's definitely something to build into your business and to do research on when you're working on costing. And we do hear from, we work in the food community, so we do hear from other people that, like Mark said, try and access the Victoria market from Campbell River up island. And, it is 3.5 hours away, right? So the cost of that and even just the time for people, it seems like there's an opportunity there, like to put things together. And that is one thing that we've worked on at Tree Island, is we have connected with other local food producers and been able to transport some goods for them. And that helps fill our trucks. So that's something that that there's an opportunity for sure.
And Dave?
Yeah, both Mark and Marissa really hit the key issue right square in the middle. So on that though, I'd like to speak a little bit on the macro and the micro ends of that spectrum. And there's really a primary macro and a primary micro challenge from our perspective. And at the macro level, cooperation and coordination among us all involved in the supply chain, whether we're marine ports or airports or truckers and freight forwarders, that coordination needs to be improved. We've been advocating for better collaboration among the ports in particular, so that really we're not always competing for the same customers and the same government infrastructure investments. Instead, we believe that a collaborative approach where each of our strategic advantages, whether they're geographic, demographic, topographic, economic, that all these advantages that are particular to each sub-region on the island, that we're maximizing those opportunities to invest in areas where there's the greatest opportunity for return, such as our proposed floating dry dock project here in Port Alberni. That's really necessary service to improve the marine transportation system, and doing that would help improve costs and efficiencies. Now at the micro level, and I'm sure Melissa will speak about this later, is that just the simple lack and cost of capacity for food producers to create the food in the first place, to produce it, is a huge barrier to developing food products before they can even be distributed to us as customers, regardless of what that cost of bringing it to market is. That's a massive barrier to entry. So facilities like our food hub, the dock, that received significant contributions, funding from the province and Island Coastal Economic Trust and support from the city, regional district, and certainly huge capital investment by the Port Authority. Those are the types of examples of things that really that can help solve that micro challenge and really be used as an incubator necessary to grow that food producing and distribution segment.
So for our next question I have, I'll start with you, Marissa. And you're probably a great example of this, but thinking of success stories, organizations or communities that are doing well or addressing, in spite of these challenges around getting products to market. Maybe tell us a little bit about, it could be your own business or another example of some success stories on how you're addressing this issue.
Yeah, so I would say that it's really interesting being in business and just being on the ground. And I've met so many interesting people in the food community that are really committed to their food and the product that they're making. And it really does take a community to raise a business. As they say, it's not just us. It was definitely, me and my husband and our family and our community. So there was many forces helping to raise a business. And I think that that's where the collaboration comes in for investment in the infrastructure. And then lucky for us, our first delivery driver was our uncle, who was semi-retired, and he wanted to get out and on the road and still talk to people. So we had that really sweat equity that helped us get off the ground. And I can't say that the margins in food are not huge, honestly. You really have to have a value-added product, and you do need to move volume. So there are some special parts to the recipe to make it successful. So I don't think we can underestimate how much collaboration is required to make the food distribution successful. Especially, we really actually live in a big province. It's really actually quite big when you compare it. It could be the size of a European country, right? With a lot less population density. So really knowing your market is really important. And I think that the marketing of the food and creating demand will help you budget for shipments and moving that volume, like filling a pallet, and there's quite a bit of planning. For us, we have a short shelf life product. It can't sit in a warehouse. So adds another complication. We need refrigeration. So we did make that investment, and we do have third-party carriers that we work with. So there's definitely lots of number crunching to figure out, is it better to do it yourself? Is it better to piggyback? Is it which market am I serving and how am I going to get there? So I would recommend, if there's anybody in the room that's looking at, or that does have a food business and is looking at how to get their product further afield, I would definitely focus on like sharpening your pencil, building your network, looking at how you can collaborate and focus on building volume and velocity in specific markets. So rather than selling 20 here, 20 there, I would try and sell 100 in one place. That's going to have a bigger ripple effect. It's going to be better for filling the pallet. It's going to be better for word of mouth marketing. Yeah, so it needs to really, distribution needs to be considered right from the beginning with your product design and business plan.
Those are excellent points. Mark, I know you have lots to say on this one, but thinking both how you're getting the good stories about how products are getting to external markets, but also here on the island as well.
Yeah, well, and all I can say is ditto and echo all of Marissa's sentiments. And I think the first statement I would make is really, it's about the collaboration and the economies of scale. And I would always say, and I think this holds true not just in food and distribution, is bigger is not always better. And what I mean by that is exactly what Marissa just articulated around that laser focus piece of picking out a market and working together, and or finding a group of like-minded products or services in your area that you can bundle up. And that's, and I know it sounds very simplistic, but it's a monumental challenge, not just to kind of pull all those pieces together, but sharing those costs. Sometimes that involves technology. Sometimes that means understanding your customer. Is your product necessarily, is your end user going to be Fairway Market, or is it a mid-market player in Duncan? Those are all things to understand. And Marissa has much more intelligence around this topic than I do, but I do understand enough about the industry that it's a very margin sensitive, price driven business, and every percentage point matters to be able to be right on top of that from the onset. So couldn't agree more, Marissa. You're bang on. And I love, ironically enough, I always like to say, this is the classic case of, you quickly through the summit, you meet people, and Marissa and I really have recently connected because of this, and we've been sharing stories through LinkedIn and email already, and already I can see that we're kindred spirits in how we can solve some of these problems. So absolutely.
Well, that's a great thing about the summit, is this is where good ideas come to be nurtured, and we'll see where we are in a year. So Dave, you've got some exciting things going on in Port Alberni. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, or some other success stories on this.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Again, to echo Mark and Marissa, and really to drive a point forward, is none of us can do anything on our own. Anybody who thinks they can, I'd like to meet them and work with them. So there goes the working alone aspect. Collaboration is key, and our Dock Plus Food Hub is a key example of that. We own what was a former very large fish processing plant, about 17,000 square feet. It's been dormant since about 2011, with a couple of fits and spurts, trying on our own to market it to a single manufacturer, another large food processor, and quickly realized, as Mark pointed out, that the food industry, like all manufacturing, has changed. It's gotten leaner. It's much more focused on value added, and we put up $500,000 of our own money as an incentive, a capital incentive for somebody else to come in and match it, to bring it up to CFIA food processing standards again, and achieve more economic value in their community, and instead of seeing raw product, primarily the salmon caught right outside my window here, off Vancouver Island. And so through the collaboration and partnerships that we developed with the city, with the regional district, Island Coastal Economic Trust, myself and Mark and Bill Collins around the Foreign Trade Zone Committee tables and VIEA summits, and building those relationships and ideas, and getting to know people in the aquaculture foods sector, we were able to come together, right people, right timing, right place, to put forward a successful funding application to the province last July to convert this dormant, amazing building with great bones right on the waterfront in the middle of Port Alberni that was going for naught. We were able to be successful with funding from the province, from Ion Coastal, to leverage our capital input with partnerships of 5 anchor tenants that Zorn mentioned in the sponsor intro, to be ready to go to solve some of these problems. And it's through cooperation and collaboration that we're able to do this. And we've got a waiting list of people that want to get into that space for when, I'm going to say when and not if, our anchor tenants outgrow the space, because we're confident that they will, because it does reduce that major barrier to entry and distribution. And that's the simple cost of a certified Canada Food Inspection Agency and Vancouver Island Health Authority permitted seafood and forest food manufacturing facility, and a commercial kitchen space that will be available to small food makers that want to toss their hat into the ring, see if they can expand their hobby into a business. And that took partnerships, and that's an amazing story that we're really, really proud to tell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just a reminder, we're going to answer some of your questions in a few minutes. And so to put a question to our panelists here, go to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, not the chat, the Q&A, and then we will see your questions here. I'd like to be able to get to as many as we can in the time that is remaining. So let's just explore that a little bit more in terms of thinking about hard facilities. So thinking about buildings and warehouses and others that have a strategic location, and especially with this pandemic and many businesses having to either shift or some even going out of business. What are some ideas that we could use existing infrastructure to help leverage the distribution challenges that we have here? So who'd like to start with that?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Okay.
We've got a number of business or a number of facilities here within our portfolio that are available to help attract domestic and foreign direct investment as well. If we circle back to the opportunities with the foreign trade zone, there's all sorts of opportunities to use existing buildings in different ways. We think differently, again, using partnerships. Our food hub is certainly one of those. We know examples that we've seen about living roofs, and whether they're condo and residential or commercial workspaces, to create micro gardens to provide lunches for the workers, for example, in those spaces, and even thinking differently about the external sides of businesses. One particular industry that's growing on Vancouver Island that some of us may be somewhat personally familiar with is a craft brewing industry. And hops are in huge demand. And certainly having a stable supply of hops for beers is a challenge. Price continues to go up. All hops need is a very large, well, all they need is a vertical wall of some sort for the bines, not vines, the hops bines to grow upward. So I'm looking at our large warehouses that we have here right in front of me on our terminals that face south, 30, 45 feet tall. Who's to say that we can't work with a hops grower to make those spaces available to grow bines to then supply hops for, in Port Alberni's case, 2, soon to be 3 craft breweries. So it's about not necessarily thinking outside the box, but thinking about maybe leaning on the big boxes that we have already.
Mark?
Yeah, so I'm just going to build on that a little, and it's really, and Dave will correct me if I have any of my thought process wrong, because it ties to the Port Authority. So, you know, you're bang on down around the collaborative piece around existing infrastructure. I think it's also noteworthy, I think it was about a year ago, I mean, the Nanaimo Port Authority has embarked on, it's about $100 million expansion they had received. I think it was 46 federally. Dave will correct me if I'm wrong. They're working with a large container group, you know, and really that part and parcel, and of course, they certainly have major industry stakeholders, the C-SPANs of the world, the Nanaimo Port, those folks, but that's really a bit of a build it and they will come. In some way, shape, or form. And, you know, and those that may not be familiar, but one of the best examples, and I think this ties into the larger import-export opportunity, is a few years ago, the Nanaimo port was very successful in working with Mercedes-Benz, and Mercedes-Benz that all used to land directly into Montreal now are shipped through the Panama Canal, and those ships end up directly at the Nanaimo port. They offload them there, and they're basically on demand pulled into the Lower Mainland. So the part two of that opportunity is now you've pulled in not a super container ship, but a mid-sized ship that's now leaving Vancouver Island empty. So that, again, that potentially even for food producers creates this international opportunity. And I know some of the discussions we've been having with both ports is, we can start to get the ships to come here, because there's certainly it's staggering when you hear the number of things and containers that roll on and off Vancouver Island in a week. But to make the business case for those folks and drive down the cost of those shipping companies, it's about having two-way traffic. So interestingly enough, some of those conversations tie into actually landing things, hypothetically produce, that we might not be able to produce here, could land directly into a Port Alberni, hypothetically. There might be a number of that gets used immediately in our market here, but then it's going back into the Lower Mainland and markets in and around British Columbia on trucks that were coming here that are going back empty anyway. So kind of ties to Dave's macro and micro, but I think, the infrastructure is, and that ties to some of those other discussions. And then again, having a foreign trade zone here on Vancouver Island, there's a compelling story for somebody to set up shop. Some of the conversations we're trying to get started. We've been talking to the Nanaimo Airport for years. They can get fairly significant freight planes in there. There's a lot of companies that do distribution out of Vancouver that fly things in. They can land on that runway. We are absolutely so well positioned as the true gateway to the Pacific. There's that little body of water in between us and the Lower Mainland, that Salish Sea. But let's be clear, the last time I checked, Port Alberni is pretty close to the direct open waters there. So I think part of it, just in closing, for sure, some of the infrastructure, we don't quite have the scale. So we need to half solve that problem. But taking things like, full points to the folks over at Port Alberni with what they're doing, and continue to repurpose and leverage all the existing assets. And then we can scale up as we work with, hypothetically, the Tree Islands around the world, and scale up and build those businesses. So it's about both importing and exporting, really on and off the island.
So I'm going to come back to the foreign trade zone in a second. I have a specific question about that. But Marissa, your thoughts about how existing infrastructure or what we have could be better leveraged to help get your goods to market?
Yeah, I think Mark and Dave actually have a really good perspective, because they're working on a bigger scale, touching a lot of different industries. And I think I just learned a lot in the last 5 minutes actually about ports and stuff. We are really into trucking actually, so we keep it pretty simple. Warehousing is a thing, warehousing in the Lower Mainland, and having your goods close to market is important. We've tapped into working with cold storage facilities, and so renting space within other facilities to keep our pallets and move them about. So there is, it's not like, depending on the food business, you don't have to own it all yourself. There is ways to rent space, I guess. It's the idea of just renting a small space in an existing warehouse and having those partnerships. But that would be all I could really contribute there.
Oh, that's good. So let's come back to the foreign trade zone for a second. So as many people who are on here may know, VIEA was successful in getting the foreign trade zone designation for Vancouver Island region from the federal government 2 years ago. Minister Baines was here to announce that 2 years ago. And there's been a lot of work done to build the groundwork for the foreign trade zone on the island. But there's probably a lot of people out there wondering, what does this thing actually mean? And more specifically, what could a mechanism like the foreign trade zone do to help some local producers to be able to get their products to market more effectively? So Mark, you've been chairing this committee for a while. Maybe we'll start with you.
No pressure, Dan. Thanks for that. That's good. So
and do it in less than 3 minutes.
3 minutes, no problem. So thank you for that opportunity. And I think we would be less than fully transparent if we didn't say there's 15 other FTZ, foreign trade zone points across the country that we're in great dialogue with, because we're really all trying to figure out the full opportunities. But in short, if you were a food producer and you were buying manufacturing equipment, probably the opportunity to start importing some of those things internationally. There's potential concessions on those taxes that you're paying for machinery, for ultimately that we are going to be producing products that are going to be outbound. If you were potentially bringing in some ingredients from a foreign country that became part of your formulation, or you were making a product that was comprised of a number of parts, there's a whole host of concessions, warehousing concessions, GST, a lot of these traditional duties and tariffs that are normally paid do not occur, specifically if you're exporting. So it is a monumental opportunity. I would be remiss if I didn't state a lot of these concessions I could live outside of a foreign trade zone and have access to those. The value of working with a VIEA or within a foreign trade zone is we offer a concierge service to navigate the waters, whether it's with the CRA or the revenue, the Canada Revenue Agency, duties and customs, because we're learning 2 years in, it is a complex process with a lot of moving parts. But the analogy that I will end on, in hopefully under 3 minutes, is that if I'm a manufacturer, food and or otherwise, and I might be able to leverage all of those existing programs and potentially add 2 to 3% to my bottom line, it's monumental. So anybody who's in those spaces, I would strongly encourage to, I hate to say this out loud because it will probably happen, reach out to myself or George at VIEA, and we're happy to have, and we have lots of ongoing dialogue to help folks really start to get engaged and understand that foreign trade zone opportunity.
That's great. And again, we can get into some of that in the roundtable at 4 o'clock with folks who may have specific questions about it. So Dave, Port Alberni's been part of this conversation. Speaking of navigating waters, what do you see a foreign trade zone designation or other mechanisms that are out there that might help get products to market more effectively?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Dan. And before I forget, Marissa, there is cold storage space available for rent in the food hub. We recognize that. So if you need that or any other food producers need some cold storage space here to transition into Port Alberni stores, give me a call, please. So
we've done some business today.
Forgive me, Dan. Yeah, the FTZ designation it's another flag for us to wave as yet another advantage for doing business on Vancouver Island, to invest in Vancouver Island. And as Mark said, having VIEA as the concierge service to navigate those really tricky, complex waters and bureaucracies, to know when somebody is a central receiving point for questions where the VIEA team can then say, okay, well, this is a question for Dave and the Port Alberni Port Authority. This is something for Jason and Michelle and Nanaimo Port Authority. Here's some of the private operators as well, query distribution. Having that FTZ and us working together in the true definition of alliance is a great advantage for us globally, and it's something that we hope, and the other 14 FTZs in Canada, we're a large country geographically, but running now at about 36 million people, our population is relatively small, and we do need to work together and really leverage each of our specific geographical and economic advantages. And there's great opportunity for us, clearly, as we've discovered, working together on Vancouver Island. Those advantages are the same as us working together with the FTZ in Montreal. We need to work together to wave, first of all, that Canadian flag, and then the map of Vancouver Island under the BC flag.
Yeah. Marissa, and from what you've just heard and gathered from this conversation, where do you think a company like yours could take advantage of something like FTZ or a similar type of arrangement?
Well, my ears perked up when I heard buying equipment, because you can get some good deals out there, and sometimes they don't come from Canada. We've got a lot of stuff from the US. You can buy things on auction and stuff like that. We did have a filling machine that we imported from Turkey, and that was quite an adventure, being new to this whole area. So, but I'm not sure. I think I need to learn more about it, actually. Is there a good resource? Is there a good web resource for that? To do some reading?
I think ftzvi.com is a good starting point.
Okay. Yeah. We actually did have a customer from China come here. This was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, prior to all the different political changes that have been happening. But we were approached to export. So I could see that there could be some opportunities for sure.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So we have quite a few questions that have come in. So thank you for those that are submitting. I do have one more question before we move to our audience, and it has to do with the role that governments can do to help foster a climate for getting products to market. So we have a re-elected provincial government here. We heard from Minister Jolie last night, Federal Minister of Economic Development. What message should we be conveying to those levels of government to help us foster this climate so that we are more effective at being an even better market for our products? Dave, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Firstly, though, we really do want to, and we do give the province of BC a lot of credit, as well as the support from our municipal and regional governments for having the vision and support, and certainly with the province, the financial investment to support the Food Hub program. We're already finding, as I mentioned earlier, that the demand is already exceeding the capacity, because the simple fact of having this facility in Port Alberni now is perking people's ears up, that now there's support in this market space, in this sector. So that investment in and of itself is stimulating more interest. So what could they do more? Already start planning for more of these, to project that it's a snowball effect, that we are now supporting the food growth industry. And perhaps it's, even though this started before COVID, certainly the last few months has shone a bright light on food sustainability and security and access for our market here on the island. So more investments, more partnerships in the food space at the micro level, because these food hubs and the dock that we're putting together here in Port Alberni, it's already proving its worth as a business incubator to encourage business growth. And then circling back again, my micro macro theme today is at the macro levels, the governments have a huge role to play in creating that needed coordinated strategic investment approach among the transportation stakeholders. We really do need to work together at what are those strategic investments? What is the infrastructure that works best in Nanaimo, that would work in Cowichan Valley, work in Port Alberni? And really what each region has its own skill sets and demographics and labor and strong Indigenous communities as well, who are great partners here in Port Alberni, especially as we look at that floating dry dock project. We've got the workforce, we've got private investment, we've got support on the community committee from local First Nations. We see this project as one of reconciliation, tangible reconciliation of creating meaningful training, meaningful jobs for our community, for our region. Working with the Nuu-Chah-Nulth Tribal Council on this project as well, and providing those levels of services. Some may say, well, it's a floating dry dock, that's industry for big ships. Well, those big ships employ people on the island. They need to be serviced. BC ferries need servicing. There's nowhere near the capacity in this sector to meet the needs of BC ferries, which are still and will be for the foreseeable future a hugely important part of exporting our goods and being part of our food production and distribution chain. So big government, the senior levels of government, working with small and bigger businesses together in that coordinator approach, that we're seeing lots of those tentacles wrapping around each other, and the partnerships that we have, much as a result of Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. That's where we can all continue to work together in partnership with government and business and those of us that supply infrastructure support.
Marissa, I'd like to go to you just for your thoughts about what these governments could be doing to help entrepreneurs like yourself.
Yeah, actually, there's a number of good programs that are available. So if there's anyone in the room that has a food business or knows someone and that are looking for resources, the Investment Agriculture Foundation of BC does a great job. Actually, they have a variety of different grants and programs that you can participate in. One of them was to support marketing of local products, and I think that's a huge thing. I think the Buy BC campaign that has run for a number of years is really positive. I think the Island Good brand mark is also really valuable, just to encourage people to make that local choice, because sometimes it will cost more for people to support local, but I think if they know that it translates into local jobs or support for other local families, that has a ripple effect in our communities, and that our dollars go farther when we spend them locally, so it has a positive effect. Definitely, I have seen a lot of work provincially and federally on promoting agriculture. So agriculture, Canadian food processing is the second biggest manufacturing industry in Canada, and we talked about that in one of our prior meetings. But I think it's something where we need where the government can help make some of those strategic investments, like in the food hub. And I do think that the distribution is something that the province or different levels of government could consider to collaborate on, because when you actually look at it, when you break down the costs and stuff of where the money goes in a food business, like there's the assets to make food and everything, but the distribution, if you have a distributor, it takes a huge portion of what you would be taking home. So I think a lot of food businesses don't necessarily budget that in, but it's a big cost. And it's something that if there was a collaborative approach or more accessible, so like making the means of production accessible is step one, but getting goods to market is the second one. And it really is an infrastructure thing. Many food producers, they aren't operating on the scale where they can, they might be selling a couple boxes, or they might be selling like a pallet every 2 weeks or something. And that might be good for a single person having a food business, but it's not going to get them any affordable rates on trucks and stuff. So there is a cost to move goods around, and it is something that there's an opportunity to support.
Thank you for that. So Mark, I'm going to go to you. Just quickly, we've got lots of questions and about 15 minutes remaining. So
no problem. And I'll be very quick, because I don't think there's, between Dave and Marissa, I think they pretty much covered it all. I just would add one piece, though. I think the other opportunity from a government standpoint that we're well positioned on, again, is really with the leveraging the local food opportunity. That it's becoming that much more important from a food security standpoint, again, during COVID. So if we can, ramp up some of those local distribution, local matters during COVID. Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to some questions, some really good ones that are coming in. So thank you for that. I'm seeing, I see two questions that are related. So what I'll do is I'll ask both of those questions, and then maybe I can get you to address those while we talk. So the first question, can you speak to the process of how to approach distributors of grocery stores, taking a business that is in farmer's market and growing it? That's first question. And then the next one is, many chain stores and the like are not considering new products for jury now due to the pandemic, even though these products are what the PM is asking for in stores, the product manager. Some can get products to the store, but can't even get to the red tape. Networking, popularity, and social media are all in play, but to no avail if there is no one listening at the stores. What are your suggestions? Who would like to start?
I'm looking directly at Marissa. I'm looking directly at Marissa.
That sounds like that's in your bailiwick.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yeah, definitely. Grocery stores are not wanting 1,000 people at their back door, so that's why they usually have preferred distributors, because every hour that it takes to receive goods is employee time, and it's a lot of work for grocery managers to manage all those listings. There's a lot of paperwork that goes for it. So I would recommend, there's two things that come to mind. One is looking at the scope and your customers. You might not be getting a larger chain, but you might start at the local health food store if that's a fit, or some of the specialty or family-owned grocers. They're definitely a lot more approachable. But you can also consider a food distributor relationship. It really depends on your product. So it depends on how widely appealing that's going to be. And the grocery store, they need to make a margin on what you're selling as well. So, the food producer honestly gets probably the smallest amount of money in the whole thing. So it's just the truth. But the grocery store wants to know what's their margin. What are they going to make if they put that on their shelf? How are you going to increase interest in that category, whatever, if you're in the cookie category or the dairy category or whatever? What are you going to be bringing 1,000 people to their store because they're looking for your product? Can you show them your numbers? Can you tell them what's their margin? What are they going to get what's the benefit for them, right? I think that's a really important thing. And I have seen, what's really interesting, I think the Cowichan Valley started an online farmers market called the Co-op. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting thing because they're actually doing some distribution, and they can take your food farther afield. And there are other businesses like that. Spud, the Sustainable Urban Delivery, they've gotten a lot bigger, but they started out small. And I know that there's other people doing those small things. I think it depends on your product. I would also look at, I've seen other, I'm not sure if anyone operates on Vancouver Island, but I think I saw something called Good Food. I don't know if that was in Vancouver or Victoria, but there are meal planning kits, or if you have a dry good, you could look at gift baskets that are getting shipped, so you could co-pack your thing into something else where it get you a larger distribution. So grocery stores are one big opportunity, but they're not the only opportunity. So it really depends on what you're selling.
Great response. Lots of detail there. Mark or Dave, do you want to add to that?
No, I just will briefly. Marissa hit some great points, and I'll talk from my perspective as a customer. My friends that I know in the craft brewing industry, there's the push strategy of the food producer themselves, trying to work with the grocery stores, the retail outlets and distributors. There's also the pull strategy of customers going to their local craft brewery, their local pub, going to their local grocery store, especially some of the smaller ones on the island, asking, do you have this product? And with social media being so effective for small producers in reaching out to their customers, and now we've got this groundswell, this wave of people really wanting to support local and getting involved in the Island Good brand, is having customers go to the store, because the stores ultimately obviously want sales, and the best way of making sales is respond to customer demand. So leverage that pull strategy as well. The customers you already have are your best salespeople.
Mark, anything?
Yeah, I think I would echo both Dave and Marissa's sentiments, and I think that the number one piece that Marissa hit on was that it's almost that bigger is not always better analogy again, that the grocery stores are, I'm not going to say careful what you wish for in that space, but for sure there's lots of other selling opportunities. And I think given what's going on in the world, ever increasing distribution opportunities.
So next question, what do you think about the future of organic food processing on the island, particularly fruits and vegetables and nuts. It is my understanding that there is no certified organic facility on the island. Therefore, producers have to send their products to Vancouver to be processed in order to maintain food's organic integrity. Marissa, I'll go to you again because you're on the leading edge of this. Any response?
So I don't process fruit per se. Well, we do make our own fruit. We do actually make our own fruit preps, but I think that this person is asking like if they were growing organic fruit and they want to get to market. So I wish I was in agriculture, like some of the other farmer people, they would probably know more about the packing houses and what the requirements are for organic certification. So I'm guessing that this person has researched that under the organic guidelines. So I think that's an interesting thing. Are you talking about value added or just raw fruit? It would be one of the questions I have.
Yeah. Well, we can explore that. Mark or Dave, do you have any insight on that?
I'd encourage the person who asked the question to get in touch with me. The commercial kitchen space in the Dock Food Hub here in Port Alberni, depending on what the requirements are to come under that certified organic label, may be able to meet those needs. And it is a growing opportunity, certainly at the consumer level. So it's something that if how we've got the kitchen laid out now and with certain equipment won't meet those needs, it's something that we would want to look at as an opportunity to meet those needs for organic producers, especially those that, whether they're packaging raw organic fruit and vegetables or doing value added. Please get in touch with me. That's a great question. I think there's an opportunity to work together.
Yeah, and I would just add at the end there, Dan, is that I know, and as recently as yesterday, I received an email out of the blue on somebody, and in fact, Dave and I were both involved in the same person. That's somebody's looking to from a co-packing facility again on Vancouver Island. So there's all those opportunities again. Some of it's going to be build it and they will come. I guess the good news is Vancouver has a lot of those things, and that is in the backyard, but there's still all those transportation costs. And at the end of the day, where's the product being sold once it's gone through that process? So.
Yeah, I think it depends. One of the things that comes up for me, it's the cleaning chemicals. I'm pretty sure that the cleaning of the equipment for organic is slightly different than conventional. There's some approved solutions that you need to use, and it might not be that difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, good pointers there. This next question, maybe Dave, I'll direct it to you because it has to do with transportation. So what adjustments do you recommend to federal regulations to cut transportation costs?
Oh boy. we need an entire summit on that, I think. But the federal government, Ministry of Transportation, Transport Canada has been undergoing a review of the Canada Marine Act for the past couple of years to look at how the distribution supply chain can be streamlined and look at those strategic investments that I spoke of earlier. So, as we know, big ships take a while to turn. We as port authorities have been involved in that process, and we believe that we should be seeing some results of that exercise in the near future. Certainly at our local regional level here is continuing to collaborate and partner as port authorities and those in the transportation supply chain to do everything we can to reduce costs and continue to work honestly and genuinely with our customers to say, yeah, we love you here in Port Alberni, or we would love you down in Victoria, but you know what, it makes more sense for your business to be located up island or at a different location. That's what we're doing is going back to that collaborative approach of seeing where we can grow businesses. We're all about growing the pie, so what's good for the island is good for all of us.
I'm going to go to the next question. I'm going to squeeze this one in. So this is back to foreign trade zone, and I think it was mostly answered in our earlier question. But Mark, this individual is asking about, can the FTZ be used to help with importing and exporting full sea cans for the product?
Full sea cans. If so, I would seek clarification, but my understanding is there needs to be some whether it's assembly, again, if we're talking about food, if it's just a touchdown point, if there's either some value add done here, I think the short answer is it can be done. It can be done, but there needs to be some process, because I can tell you that, and there's a lot of folks right now that we're having conversations with from, Gateway, Pacific Gateway countries that are looking at, that might currently be exporting into the US, but now are looking at Vancouver Island as a touchdown point to potentially add some value add here. And one of the criteria is, I know that as your business, it needs to be, I think the number is 95%. It's a large percentage of your business needs to be export business. So if you're local, that does not preclude you, because there's always ways and means around that where you potentially set up a net new company that's your exporting division. So yes. Again, I would defer to the experts to the best of my working knowledge. Now, the answer is yes.
Excellent. So final question here. Oh, we got one in here, which is very specific. Importing 20-foot and 40-foot sea cans of packaging. I usually bring them into Vancouver, and then third-party transports them by C-SPAN.
So I'm gonna. This is a Dave McCormick question, but I think the short answer is what we're trying to do as an aggregating company is I would love to have that conversation directly, as I think Dave would, because what we need to do is. It's one thing, and whether they're bringing in 1 container, 3 containers on a monthly basis is what we're trying to do, is create enough demand, as it were, for a whole host of products to basically fill a shelf. And in the, whether it's, make the analogy on a truck, it's either a full load or a less than a load. We're trying to do the exact same things, working with both the Nanaimo and the Port Alberni Port, is to go, what are all the goods we should be bringing in, aggregated together on where our target is to start with 1 monthly port of call, which could be somewhere in the order of 60 to 80 containers of stuff. So we would be, we're not going to circumvent that problem today, but we're working really hard to solve that problem.
And the more of these types of businesses that we learn about, whether it's 2 containers or 20 containers here and there, continue to work to aggregate. And then that's our job as a port authority, and that's what we have been doing to collect the information and the contacts to see when, again, not if, when we get to the point where we can aggregate a container ship call. We've got the Yachuksit Tribe Government's Thunderbird Spirit water bottling facility is being constructed in one of our former paper storage warehouses here. We talk about repurposing buildings. And so they're doing the same thing. They're importing packaging. They will be taking their fresh water source, bottling the water, loading them into containers, and the containers will go out to export. If we've got enough containers to export enough containers importing, say, packaging that we can aggregate on a ship coming in, enough product that has about the same time sensitivity considerations, we can load them back up here from Port Alberni and ship them out by export. So with every one of these questions, they're really interesting, and we certainly need to learn more, and excited to do that.
Absolutely. I'm going to leave it on that, but I will relay this one comment here. One of the best sessions of the conference. Way to go, everyone. So well done. Don't tell the other ones. Anyway, thank you very much to our panelists for a really interesting conversation today. A reminder to everyone that we have a roundtable at 4 p.m. So please go back to the website and click on the roundtable to join us. I'm sure there'll be lots of more insight as we move forward. So, and thank you very much, Dave, and to your team at the Port Alberni Port Authority for sponsoring this session and for being a great sponsor and a partner of VIEA. And all of our panelists will be receiving a gift from St. Jean's Cannery Smokehouse for your participation today, a good new Chalut Seafood Group company. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.